Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I am beyond excited to bring you the 10th of our 10 amazing sessions this week. And I've just been so blown away by the feedback that we're getting from all of you and just the stories that you're sharing and the people that we're helping and the people that you're helping and all of our amazing speakers who volunteer their time and so many people that have been involved in bringing this and making. That's what this session is all about, and that this was a dream for me and it's something that I wanted to do, and just being able to see it all come to life and see it make a difference is really what we wanted to the experience to come from this. So before we get started, I just want to begin by paying respect to the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. So as I said, welcome to our inspiration. So this is a culmination of all our sessions this week. We've had all the practical sessions. Our morning session today was all about changing careers, setting big dreams, and how you actually get there. And this afternoon, we've got the most amazing panel of people who've done that, who've stepped out of their comfort zone, reached for their dreams and achieved unbelievable things. So we've got four speakers here today. I know it's Friday afternoon. I know some of you are sitting here there thinking, oh, really unhappy and, not enjoying your jobs. And I know a lot of people have been affected by what's happening recently. This is the day that most people resign on a Friday, so there's still time. It's only 2 o'clock, but I'm not telling you all to go and quit your jobs today. But what I do want to say is that if you set a goal and set a dream, you can achieve it. So I hope you take lots out of the conversation that we have this afternoon. So your career is really up to you. You can make the change. And that's been a common theme and thread that's come from all of our speakers, that you've got to start with yourself and that self-awareness. Look at your strengths, look at your passions, what you really love to do. And that might be on the weekend. And Blair especially will share his story about something that he really loved to do and has turned that into an amazing career now. So follow your dreams, don't look back. And on that note, I want to introduce you to our awesome panel, and I'm so excited that we end on this note. So Anton Enos, you will all know, has been on everyone's television screen. I came from Ireland, and since I've been here, Anton has brought the world news to me, understanding what's happening back at home and all around the world. He's had an amazing career in South Africa and covered so many stories across the world. He's won numerous awards. He's also run more than 40 marathons, which I didn't realize. And Anton's got his own story. So towards the end of 2016, Anton was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And after recovery, he's now really urging other people to get checks and to look after your health. And we had a great session on health and well-being yesterday. So he's also now the Bowel Cancer Australia ambassador. So Anton's back on our screens and sharing all the world news, and Seb's in the US today. So he just showed us that the presidential campaign is happening over there, as we all know. So welcome, Anton. We're so excited to have you here. Amanata has been introduced to me fairly recently, and I've just been blown away by Amanata's story. This is her book that I finished reading a couple of weeks ago, and it's changed everything for me in relation to my perspective of how you appreciate what you have. And I think, again, during this time, a lot of people have faced things they haven't faced before and had to really think about what's important. And Amanata's story, Amanata grew up in Sierra Leone. We're going to hear some of her story today. She had a really beautiful upbringing and lived with her dad and was really close. But that changed in 1999 when Amanata was captured by rebel forces. So she was kept for a number of months under captivity. And she was finally freed as part of a negotiated prisoner exchange. So rebel held child prisoners were released in return for food and medicine. So Aminata has shared her story and been so brave to share that story in her book. UNHCR recognised that, you know, her captor, one of her captors, still posed a threat to her life. So she actually became the first Sierra Leonean refugee woman in Australia. So such an amazing story. Aminata arrived in Australia as a refugee, felt really lonely, confused, homesick, but through meeting some beautiful people, including her husband, she's built a life in Australia. She had a great career, and started to share her story and talk about what happened and inspire others. That all culminated in her passion, which was to really help others. And Aminata has set up the Aminata Maternal Foundation, which helps to give back and help women and babies in Sierra Leone improve their maternal health. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Aminata's the amazing work she's doing for the Aminata Maternal Foundation, and helping. I think the statistic is that 1 in 8 women in Sierra Leone don't have a positive experience with pregnancy. So Aminata, you can share some of those statistics. So welcome, Aminata. Thank you for joining. And next we have Blair. Blair Jocelyn. Many of you know Blair as Moog. So Blair is I know him as Blair. So Blair, I'm going to call you that. Blair is a composer. So he started his career. He worked creating TV commercials. He has written lots of musical pieces. He's in his studio joining us now. And on the weekends, he really quite liked cars. So himself and his friend decided, is it 13 years ago now, Blair? Yeah, to set up, to just, play around with cars and set up a YouTube channel and do some videos as a hobby. He now has over 650 million views on YouTube. He's got 3.4 million YouTube subscribers and 5.5 million social media followers. But that's not all about Blair. Discovery Channel have picked up the show. It's the most successful Australian car show of all time. It's also completely independently made, and it's really authentic and very real. But Blair has a really deep heart and really wants to give back to others. So he went back to uni a few years ago, and he's completed his studies to become a counsellor. So he's got a postgrad diploma in counselling. And I just think this is so fascinating that Blair recognised that there is a lot of issues that come with fame, and YouTube is a whole new industry. And this morning we were talking about these new industries and what they mean. And I think this whole social media side is all new. And so Blair works really hard to support people that are becoming famous, and he has a real key interest in the psychology of fame and how to help high profile creators manage their mental health. So he's been a keynote speaker at Google's first wellness summit, and he's also worked in Korea on behalf of YouTube, supporting people. He's volunteered a lot with Youth Off the Streets, and he's now an ambassador for the mental health charity Reach Out. So welcome, Blair. I know I was trying to write all these and go, oh my God, these people are amazing. And so thanks, Blair. Seb, so Sebastian Terry, better known as Seb, is the founder of 100 Things and Kinsum. So I heard of Sebastian probably about 3 or 4 months ago, in the middle of COVID. I was trying to get fit and healthy, getting up morning, doing a 1.5 hour bushwalk, and I was thinking, oh, I need to listen to some more podcasts. So I heard Seb speaking at a podcast that I listen to all the time called The Small Business Big Marketing Show. And I loved Seb's story, just really connected. Seb just is such a giver and, just wants to help other people identify their goals and their passions and reach them. Seb, I've been listening to your podcast now on all my walks and love them. And Seb's also just launched a new course and program to help people. So his business, or his movement is called 100 Things. And when Seb's originally from Australia, but is joining us from LA, where he lives now. And unfortunately, in Seb's earlier years, he lost a friend, a really close friend, to suicide. He realized after that he just wasn't happy doing what he was doing, and he wrote a list of 100 things. Seb can tell us a little bit more about how the story goes, but he has been spending his years achieving that list and ticking things off, including marrying a stranger in Vegas and delivering a baby. So he now really helps other people to reach their dreams and set meaningful goals. And he's, really big in the kindness space. So he's always looking at helping other people achieve their goals too. So wow, such as I said, an awesome panel. But Anton, before I hand over to you to moderate this, these amazing speakers, I just had a question for you, Anton. Obviously you've just been such a stable person in Australian people's lives, and I think for new people coming into Australia, that connection to the world, and you've had your challenges and hurdles and face them and through work. Do you have a message of hope and inspiration for people out there as to how they can break through some of these tough times and move towards a positive mindset, and what's kind of helped you during these times?
Well, hello Yvonne, and hello everyone on the panel. I'm speaking to you from SBS headquarters here in Sydney, a place that I've loved for 21 years and been very privileged to be able to tell people's stories in all of that time. So I'm a very fortunate person. I've had a wonderful outcome, as you said, huge setback towards the end of 2016 with the adventure in the cancer universe, as I like to describe it. The main thing that came out of that for me was a sense of gratitude, and just the fact that I survived that period of it was quite a challenging period. I look for gratitude wherever I can, in simple things, in work, in home life, walking the dog, listening to some beautiful music. If I'm out for a run, just listening to the rustle of the trees, there are lots of little things you can find value in your everyday life. I think now more than ever before, it's something that we need to look for as we're either in lockdown or in restricted lives. We need to find ways of adding value to our everyday lives. Having said that, I've been in a very fortunate position in sort of the entire 21 years that I've lived in Australia. I've been helped by people. It's been quite extraordinary, actually, that people have gone out of their way to help me as a new migrant to this country with no experience to find a place. And here in the SBS newsroom is exactly where I found that place. And I was made to feel very welcome from day one. And that hasn't changed in all of that time. It really, I think SBS for me encompasses that sense of family, of that multicultural family that modern Australia has become. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But I think that's enough about me. Let's go to some questions from our panel and hear their wonderful and energizing stories. I think we're going to start on a fairly serious note. Aminata, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your life in Sierra Leone, living on that yellow house on the hill, and also about that very dramatic incident that completely changed your life.
Hello. Thanks, Anton, and thanks, Yvonne, for having me. Um, well, for me, myself, even though what happened to me during the war, my memory of Africa, Sierra Leone, it's always been a happy one. I grew up with my so incredible father, who was passed. I grew up with three siblings. My father was very disciplined. We grew up very privileged. He was a very hardworking man, but he was also a single dad who had certain values and rules of how we should really live our life to be able to give to others. I always said, even in my book, I thought growing up, my father's job was giving because he gave relentless and but he cares. So we grew up in this area in the capital city of Freetown, Sierra Leone, which is Freetown. We grew up around really this big yellow house, and we had everything that we wanted. We never wanted for nothing. He traveled overseas. We went to the best school, but we also surround around people that were very less fortunate, but we didn't see them as that. I think that was he intended for us to grow up that way, that even though we had this privilege, but we had to grow up around people who didn't have, and how we can learn how to give. And he was extremely protective of his children, but of his daughters. His daughters were especially very precious, and he wanted us to have education was like the key. We had tutorer almost 5 times a week. And he made sure we went to a very good school. And as a single dad too, what he did was he became friends with all the teachers, so we could do no wrong. So that was my childhood. I never wanted to leave my father or leave Africa. And where I grew up, my school, my home, I have this really beautiful memory. And obviously that changed in 1999, January 6th, when I was kidnapped and taken away from my dad's hands. I was holding my dad's hands. He had Parkinson. He was very sick, and his hands was really shaking. And we've been moved from our house outside this little land. And the idea was, if we didn't get out of our house, they were going to burn us in the house. So when we came to this field, really me holding my father's hand, my father's hand, it was a place where I knew that we were all going to be shot. So I really wanted to stay close to him when that scene happened. But the moment really this one of the rebel looked at me, I knew he was coming for me. So what I did was to let go of my dad's hand. I knew my dad was extremely protective. And the reason why I had to let go of my dad's hand when he called me, it was because the war has been going on for a long time. I knew what would have happened. They would have shot him or asked me to shoot my dad, or go to the extreme to rape me in front of my father. And I knew how much my dad is protective, and I didn't want that. So I instantly felt this protection of walking away and never looked at my dad's face. So for me, in my story, that has been the most painful memory, because I was grown up and brought up in this bubble, and all of a sudden there was a pin that just burst, and my father was never the same man again. So I was taken away for several months. I still don't remember how long. And the reason why they kidnapped girls was to be used as sex slave and as human shield, meaning when the rebels and the government were fighting, they would put civilians and they would give us guns so that the government thought that we were rebels. And then a lot of casualty will happen. So that really became my life for several months, and I got exchanged. There were children that were supposed to be exchanged, not myself. So I've always counted my life as a miracle. So I understand very much, Anton, when he talked about gratitude, because that is my daily prayer. Empathy and gratitude, I live by that every single day. So I was miraculously in that group of children, and that I was not supposed to be in it. It was something horrible that happened to my life. to myself with another rebel the night before. So we got released, and my father and my family find that I realized I was alive on television because I had to give a letter to the government and be read on the news. So, and so I fled to Guinea Conakry, and the UNHCR have heard of my story, and my captive was still looking for me because he became really obsessed with me when I was kidnapped. So when when I've been released, he still came looking for me. So then the UNHCR, High Commissioner Refugee, knew that my life was in danger, and I had to flee to Australia. So,
What do you think, Aminata, was the thing that saved you? You say you described it as a miracle. What do you think was, what was your guardian angel there?
For me, without no doubt, it was my father and God. I really, my faith became more stronger because I was surrounded by so much evil. I have seen things that I still can't believe that it's true. I've done everything to survive. But for those moments when I was kidnapped, I could feel my dad. I could feel that my dad was gone. He was broken. And I wanted to see him. So I did everything possible to make sure that I would survive every minute. It was the most intense time during the war. A lot of bombing going sometimes. Some of the skills that even happened that I could think of doing just to survive was crazy. I think for me, that's when people talk about war, it's a place that no human wants to be in, because I would take people like a dead body and just pretend I was dead. I could do all sort of things just to survive. And for me, I knew I had to hold on to the love of my dad. I knew that was pure, that was clean, and nobody could touch that. And then my faith, really knowing that the beauty, we were all created for something good, and we human change. So those were the two things that I knew that was pure and that I hold on to.
That is quite a searing story, Aminata. I'm going to get back to it, especially about your life in Australia. But let me introduce Seb now. We know, Seb, that 100 Things sprang from a trauma of a different kind, the death, a tragic death of a friend of yours. Tell us a little bit about that moment, and particularly I'm interested in the Seb just before you heard that news and the way you changed just after.
Thanks, Anton. Pleasure to be here with you, and Aminata, absolute privilege to be doing this with you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I suppose back in, I'm from Sydney, although I am in LA right now. And I was kind of I finished high school. I wasn't really sure what to do. I went to university because I was told to, and I got a degree because that's just what people did. And I remember at graduation being really underwhelmed when everyone else was so happy. And I just went backpacking overseas. I thought, well, I wonder what else is out there, because this hasn't really gripped me. And I just kind of drifted around aimlessly. And I was 24. I was traveling for a number of years, and I was 24, and I just got a phone call in the middle of the night from a friend back home in Sydney. And he broke the news to me that one of my close friends, a guy called Chris, who I'd gone to school with and played rugby with and rode surf boats with and had beers with and all those things, Chris had passed away overnight. It wasn't actually suicide, Yvonne. It was something different. So it was accidental, actually, but it was just as tragic. And that news, it rocked a community, and of course myself in Canada by myself. I didn't really know what to do, and so in that moment, I became I started contemplating life, and to the best of my ability. And I asked a lot of the questions that many of us do in that situation. Why am I here? Or what am I doing? Whatever it is I am doing, am I doing it well? And the more I thought about that, just the more confused I became. But then this hypothetical popped into my head, and it was this. And I just simply wondered, if Chris had another chance at life, if he got given another 24 years, we were both 24. I was actually 25, he was 24. If he got given another 24 years, would he live the same way? Was he happy with how he lived? Or would he change? Would he change one thing or everything? And I could only think about the question, obviously, and I don't think Chris would have changed anything. He loved the beaches, and he loved his friends, he loved his family and team sport and being a big kid. And rightly or wrongly by anyone else's code or any other standard. He just lived a life that reflected his values. That stood out really clearly to me. This is just after putting the phone down, after reading this news. And then I sort of turned that hypothetical on myself, and I just wondered, well, if I died today, what would I be? What would I do? And I look back at my life with a perspective that I hadn't got before. And I just, simply wondered, well, would I change everything with another 25 years? Or would I just live the same? And I realized almost instantly that I'd change everything. I wasn't happy. I didn't know my values. I hadn't smiled genuinely in a long time. I didn't know myself. So I got a piece of paper and a pen, and I just simply wrote down a list of things that I wanted to try because I thought they might make me smile more or feel better. And that was the beginning of my 100 things list. And shortly after that moment, I dropped everything in my life to pursue it. So, I mean, you asked the question, what was I like before and what was I like afterwards? I just wasn't, I'd never backed myself before. I always had conformed to whatever the norm was, wherever I was. I never stood out. Not that you need to stand out, by the way, but, I just never even dared stray away from the herd. And my list was my opportunity to do that, but as a byproduct only of trying to just find a sense of happiness. And of course, 12 years on now, my life's changed, and I'm definitely a different person.
Those are pretty big questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? And so on. Was your first instinct when you took pen to paper and you started drawing up the list, was your first instinct to have something really profound things on that list?
No, I don't think so. No, not as a 24-year-old. Certainly, I mean, this is another thing when you. I don't really refer to my list as a bucket list, but a lot of people think bucket list, and I don't really like the term because it's quite death-centric. Although, of course, death, it adds a certain urgency and makes us think in a different way. So there is value to that. But no, I didn't try and be profound. I just tried to be happy. There wasn't any. That was it. I just realized that for me, I just wanted to be happy, and so I think the first thing that went on the list was marry a stranger in Vegas because it was legal for some reason. I thought, why not? That'd be fun. So glad Aminata's laughing. I just thought, why not? So there wasn't anything profound about it. As a byproduct, of course, it's been quite a profound journey, and the fact that it's completely outgrown me and it's spawned a bigger community of people and lives have now been saved because of this list, and it's a very bizarre thing to think about. No, I mean, potentially it's profound in a sense that not many of us give ourselves permission to think about things or to certainly choose to live a life that just makes us happy because we're told from a very young age to live a certain way. So maybe there is some sick sense of being profound by just saying, I'd like to try something different.
It's a mark of the age of the pandemic that none of us have met face to face before, but I feel like we have certain things in common. Seb, we've both walked the red carpet, perhaps in very different circumstances. You kind of surreptitiously and enthusiastically, and me just completely reluctantly. And Aminata, of course, we share the continent of Africa and part of our early life, and Blair, we both have wonderful memories of an old VW in our past. I had a great little Golf GTS circa 1985, which I just loved driving, and it was just such a part of my life. And when you spoke about, we know you've got a supercar now because we've just seen the latest episode of your show. But when you spoke lovingly about the VW and what it meant to you, it just brought back a flood of memories for me about those old days and the things that are important in life, and they're not necessarily very, very expensive things. They're just maybe little things that touch you in certain ways. So that's a sort of neat segue to get to you, Blair. From what I can see, you've had this really amazing career in the ad industry. Why do you think that was not satisfying enough? What was there that was reaching out for something else?
That's a good question. First, can I just acknowledge, that this talk is happening, and also Aminata's story. It's kind of, after hearing that, it feels strange to talk about businesses and YouTube views and other things. So I just want to acknowledge that and how meaningful it is to be on a panel with you. So I just want to acknowledge that first of all. I grew up in country New South Wales, and my dad was an announcer on radio, and so he there was only one station. And so you'd go into the local shopping centre and you'd hear my dad on the radio, and I'd be on the school bus and hear my dad on the radio, and I'd say to people, "That's my dad." And they'd say, "No, it's not," because that's about as famous as you got in Graft. And I thought that was really exciting. And we moved down to Sydney in 1986, and my dad took over a station here called 2CH. And so he worked there for a long time running the station. And so I really liked the idea of broadcast from a young age. I just thought that was wonderful. And I think a lot of people that were musicians always had this dream to kind of be a rock star. And I think some people kind of go, maybe I'm going to quit my job and be a famous DJ or be a model or be something. And it wasn't that my dream wasn't as high. I just really wanted to do music for TV commercials. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever, to be able to write a piece of music and get everything done in 30 seconds, and then it's on television and no one knows who did it, but I knew that I did it. I just thought that was wonderful. And so from when I was in year 10 at school, that was just my focus. It's like, I'm going to write music for TV commercials. That's it. I didn't kind of aim to be in a band and then fall back. I was just like, that's what I want to do. And so I was very, very focused on doing that. And so I did music at school, then went to university. I did my honours degree in music. And as soon as we finished, having a music degree and trying to get paid work is really, really difficult. And so I put up signs around film schools and at afters and other places saying, I'll do music for 10% of your budget. And so people were saying, I did a short film for $200. So I'm doing music for $20 and $10. And I was just doing anything. I did some adult films and the music for them, that is, I didn't star in them, and fitness videos and corporate videos and the bottom rung of the music industry. But I was just so hell bent on just going there bit by bit. And I just slowly, over years and years and years, worked up to the point that eventually I got represented by one of the best music companies in Australia and New York. And they offered me a job, and I was maybe 27 or 28 years old, and I thought all my dreams had come true. And they offered me a job, and I said no, because I just didn't believe in myself. Something that Seb had said before, I feel like I didn't have permission to think that I was good enough, and I didn't want to wreck what I'd worked on for so long. And so I said no. And I said, but please call me in a year. And so that year, I went to the Conservatory of Music and I did the jazz course. I learnt lots of new technology. I did the Berklee College of Music lyric writing course because I thought my lyrics were really ordinary. And I just treated myself like an athlete for a year. And I just trained and practiced and learned. And a year later, to their credit, they called me and I went, I'm ready. Like, I'm now ready. Let's go. And so that's pretty much been my career up till now. But then on the weekend, I was making some YouTube videos. But yeah, that's the music compartment of my life anyway, which has been really rewarding and I've really enjoyed.
That's a pretty strong story. I mean, everyone would have jumped at that opportunity, irrespective of whether you could or could not. I think it's a pretty big decision not to take the cherry that was kind of dangling in front of you. Just to take a step back, when you were making those videos for the zero budget movies and not making any money out of that, tell us about the sort of satisfaction from a creative point of view. Was that high? Was it low? How did that work for you?
It was very high because I've never felt like anything has been wasted. And it was interesting, Andon, I was reading about your marathons, that you've run 40 marathons. I don't gather you woke up one day and ran a marathon. I reckon you probably ran down the street or you ran on the spot. And those things, somebody might look at you, maybe people that have been in rehab and they've learned to walk to the bathroom and then back to their bed again. And so that's a marathon effort for those people. And so I probably saw each bit of music as training towards when I would get my chance to do my real thing. So to me, it was like a musical marathon, and doing a piece of music for no money that I would spend 2 hours on, that was like doing some squats. And then doing the next bit of music was like doing 2 pull-ups. And eventually I would get to the point that that you can kind of link all of these little skills together and do something bigger. And I really treated it, I use that analogy because I really treated that time like I was an athlete. And what would an athlete do? They would get up early, they would eat well, no alcohol, no partying, just treat it as you're a professional. Even though I was earning no money, how would I live if I were a professional? And I lived like that. I lived like I was successful, and I wasn't. And not in a way of fake it till you make it. I just thought, how can I be comfortable in myself and my own ethic of how I work? I'm going to put that in place. And that's what I did.
That's a great analogy, actually. I think marathon running has certainly taught me a lot about myself, about how you engage with life. I ran a thing called the Comrades Marathon in South Africa for 10 years in a row. It's 90 kilometers, very, very tough course. and you get to about maybe 65, 70 Ks, and your body really has had enough. It's your body's not really designed to run that kind of distance. So you've really just got to tough it out for those last 20, 25 Ks, find a way to do it. And the way you do it is you run from one lamppost to the next. You measure just a small victory from here to there, 50 meters, 20 meters, you get there, and then you set yourself another little goal, and you have to go a little bit further. The other thing about it also I would say about taking on something big like a marathon is you can't busk your way through it. You know, as you say, you felt you were not ready to take that leap. With marathon running, is you can't busk your way through it. If you haven't done 6 days a week training for 6 months beforehand for something like the Comrades, you're going to get found out. You know, you're going to get halfway and it's like your body's just going to reject you. You know, it's like it's not going to work. But you raised a very interesting thing about giving yourself permission to succeed. Seb, if I could go back to you, you know, I had a look at the website, and it's this little thing that says, click here to start your list. And I was like, you know, like I had my finger ready to click, and I was like, well, that's quite a big step actually to start that process, because it might reveal stuff that maybe you don't want to know. It's stepping out of your comfort zone, perhaps, that you're going to ask yourself questions that are going to be quite difficult to answer. How does that process, not just for you, work for you, but for other people who've pressed that button?
It's so interesting, isn't it? It can be quite a daunting thought to actually look in the mirror and go, what do I want? Because it's a foreign concept for many of us, and it certainly was for me. I think you actually break down the process of creating a list into 4 parts. I think the first part is literally giving yourself permission. Sounds very easy, and it's a split-second decision, but it's something that you need. You don't have to typically, you know, usually we wait for it to come, permission, but you can give it to yourself. So I think that's step 1, and I think you don't have to reflect, and that's the looking in the mirror part. You know, where are you right now, and what did you do to get there? In a workshop that I would run, I get people to write a eulogy as if this was their last day. It's very confronting, but I did it myself when my friend Chris passed away, like I mentioned. I thought, have I been a good family member? Have I been a good son? Have I been a good friend? Was I ambitious? Was I a goal-getter? You know, would I be proud of the things that I did? And those are quite daunting, confronting questions. And pretty much on every occasion, the answer was no. I wish I was better. So I completely hear you when you say you didn't do it because you weren't sure of what might pop up. But when you've done that, knowing you can't change it, what it acts as essentially is really good footing to know that you need to change if you want to. I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse than being on your deathbed and looking back at life and having a moment to think about it and thinking, I wish I did that differently. And that comes from permission. So, you know, I think you reflect, you just acknowledge that that's what's happened. And then I think it's, you know, a deep dive into your values. And values, you know, over time they change entirely. They can do at least, but they're pretty much the foundation to any meaningful, relevant list. So I think if you're able to understand your values, you can then build a meaningful list, and that of course is step 4. So you know, you could look at it in a million ways. I mean, look, when I started my list, I basically just got, you know, a proverbial shotgun and shot it onto a canvas, and there are about 100 things. Only retrospectively can I look back and think, oh, they're actually representations of, you know, a fewer number of values. So that's, you know, that's the thing. And there's also a misconception that a bucket list needs to be skydiving, climbing Everest, running 40 marathons, which is incredible, by the way. You know, all these huge ticket items, and in themselves are amazing. But for other people, I'm running a workshop now in October. It's a 30-day workshop in October, and on Monday, we had our 5th Zoom call, and everyone shared their most meaningful goal. And this week, they're trying to implement that in their life. And so there was zip lining, there was hang gliding, there were a few others, which are meaningful for various reasons, being afraid of heights or what have you. But one lady was really brave and said she just wants to create better boundaries in her life. So again, the concept of a goal it's a very relative concept, and it doesn't have to be physical or something you need to write a book about. It could be very internal and personal. And that's the beauty of it. So look, I think, you know, the difference between pressing that button and creating a list is a difference between, and I'm not, of course, suggesting this of you, Anton, but I think that's a big differentiator between people who perhaps look back on their last day and go, oh, I'm glad I made that change. And people who go, I wish I'd done a bit more. Again, let me just reiterate, not casting that on you, Anton, But yeah, it's an important thing. We all have to
Okay,
ask ourselves.
I'm just having a bit of breakup here, so I'm not really hearing very well. I'm going to throw a question to you, Aminata. You know, having experienced this life and death situation, and then come to Australia, just tell us a little bit about how you've turned that into something positive, where you can then be of assistance to others. And I can just apologize, Seb, I was probably speaking over you there, but I couldn't hear you.
Anton, can you please repeat that question again, if you may?
Aminata, I think we've lost Anton. Yvonne, do you want to pick it up,
That's
please?
okay, I'll jump in. So Aminata, Anton was just asking, when you came to Australia, you were lonely, and then how did you manage to turn that into a positive, and obviously the positive work that you're doing now? Anton, you're back, so I'm back.
Well, I think the way, of course, coming to Australia was very lonely. I deliberately chose Australia, but not knowing that I was coming to Australia, thinking that I was going to Austria. So which was really interesting. But I think for me, turning my life or making my life for the better of good, it's because everything that I was taught before the war was good. And my father taught me to give back once you have, to whom, as the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And I felt like I've come to a safe country, and being lonely, the loneliness part was more missing my father and my family. It was not to be, I didn't have that urge to be fitting at all. I'm not, probably not built like that. I love being by myself, but it was more missing my dad and knowing that my dad was going to pass. He was dying, but also knowing that him being alive, he was struggling with what has happened. And so, but I was from the moment I got released from the war, from my kidnapper, I forgave. Forgiveness was the first thing that I did. I didn't understand what forgiveness means. I knew that I had to be free for myself, not for the person, but to be able to do what I want to do, and really just enjoy the freedom for what I fought for. I fought incredibly hard to survive, So I knew coming to Australia, dwelling on it, and not even in Australia, even the fact that I even survived and being released. If I was in Africa, end up in any part of the world, I still knew that I wanted to appreciate the life that I have now, and really live for that moment, but give as much as I can, because my father has given so much to me. And so that really was the drive. I knew I wanted to be of service to this beautiful, crazy world that we live. I wanted to give back to humanity. I didn't know how. And so I volunteered a lot with UNHCR, because I felt connected to UNHCR because it was the organization that have supported me. So I did a lot of volunteer until the office here realized that I find out about my story and start sharing my story. So I didn't feel, I know with war and women that have been abused and raped, there's a lot of shame. I did carry that. It was not so much as a shame, it was more that I wanted to keep that for myself until I dealt with it the way I feel fit. But my greatest thing that I wanted to do in my life was really to serve another human being, to give back. And really the fact that I also have to almost lose my daughter in Australia when I gave birth to my daughter in 2012, that was the first, that was the thing that ignite or put light something in me in maternal health. I didn't know about maternal health. Growing up in Sierra Leone, women die when they have children, and then the men get married again. It was not a thing. Like, it was not like oh, that's maternal health is bad. It was not that. So when I gave birth to my daughter in Australia, and I had 7 doctors, and I almost lost her, and I had 7 doctors that made sure that I survived, she survived. I knew that I wanted to do something. This is, I mean, childbirth is a basic human right. The moment that struck me, I didn't care about not having qualification. I didn't care about not having anything, no money. I just wanted to share what was happening in my country. And really, that's what, and that is from really growing up with my father and seeing how much he gave, and I wanted to do that. So, yes.
I mean, that we're not just impacted by this horrible pandemic, which I think is very challenging for a lot of people, but for those of us who come from ethnic minority, migrant communities, there's also, this is a very sort of politicized area. People come from very traumatized backgrounds, they're fleeing war and so on, and then they come here and there's a very big divisive debate about refugee policy and so on. What advice do you have, having gone through all of what you've gone through, for people in migrant communities who are dealing with trauma and loss? How do they cope? How do you help them cope?
Refugees and migrants who have come from another country and migrated in Australia, I knew that when I came here, my gone through have to be really not put aside. It's almost like you don't have to even remember it. I didn't know what trauma meant. When people say to me, you've been traumatized, I didn't really understand it, because from where I come from, we don't have words for those things. I didn't suppress. I think for me, it was very important. I own my story. I own what had happened to my body. I didn't want to put it aside and just forget it. But every day, most of the time, I'm remembering things. And I think the way I was very, very blessed to meet a really wonderful family, the Dwyers, a church that really took me on. And also, my story was not in the center of our relationship. I was Aminata and the loved, and which that was extremely important to me. I didn't want my story to be the reason why I'm getting help. And again, that was the reason why I chose Australia deliberately, even not knowing where I was coming. I didn't want to go to America. I didn't want to go to Canada because I knew people would know of my story. So I believe people who have gone through trauma, refugees and migrants, they want to deal with it. But when they come to a country like Australia, it's so far off. You come in as a surviving mode also. When I came here, it would take me like a month or 2 before I see somebody that looks like me, which was not an issue at all. But I was learning about race for the first time. I didn't think I was a Black girl until I came to Australia. I thought being Black was cool. I didn't know that at all. So there's so many things that you're learning, that dealing with trauma is like way back. It's like way back. So I'm learning about all these things all at the same time. So I didn't really have time to think about, oh, I was traumatized. Oh, this had happened. But the moment I had a family that really took me in and wanted to know who really I was and the way I was brought up, my grandfather, that really changed things for me. I became human. And refugees and migrants, I've just had this tag instead of people seeing them as human. I'm here in Australia, I live in Australia, so I'm talking on the land of Australia in a way. As soon as you say you're a refugee, there's this tag. As soon as you say from Africa, there's poverty and animal and corruption that tag with you. So you don't even have that space and that platform to even talk to somebody about your story. I met a counselor that constantly told me that she understood what I've been through. And I didn't understand what she was talking about. I'm like, how can you understand what I've been through? So these are the language that refugees and migrants get thrown at that makes them really suppress their trauma. And I absolutely believe, I really believe that Australians need to do more in communicating when it comes to refugee and teaching their community what
Absolutely.
refugees are. Yeah.
Absolutely. My experience, of course, having grown up in apartheid South Africa,
yeah,
with a brown skin, coming to Australia, it's like, wow, multiculturalism, this is great. It was such an eye-opener. For the first time in my life, I was not seen just because of the color of my skin. So, I mean, I think mental health is such an important issue, Blair. We know that that is yet another string to your bow. I know how important it was for me talking about illness and trying to find a way through that. I know also that it's difficult for men, difficult for middle-aged men to speak about that. Tell us why that focus is so important for you.
I think for me, I had an experience up in Queensland where we organised kind of these fan meets where people who watch the show can meet us in real life, and we take the cars there. And we have a lot of people that watch the show in Australia, and they're 98% male. And so to give it some numbers, I had a look at some stats yesterday. I think in the last 30 days or 60 days, there's I think 6 million unique viewers, of which 22 or 25% are Australian. So we have around 1 million Australians watching each week, which would outrate most free-to-air TV shows. But of those numbers, 98% of them are male. So I'm pretty sure that our show is accessing more males than pretty much any other mainstream media show in the country, and that I see it kind of as a responsibility. And we started traveling around doing these tours where people could bring their cars, and we had people from Reach out there talking about mental health and raising money for them. And I had a kind of line of people line up to say hi to me, and every fourth or fifth person had some really traumatic story. And they'd say, this happened to me, or I lost someone I loved, or I've been suicidal. And I didn't really know how to honor that then. This was a number of years ago. And I'd say to them, maybe if we could just, I'd love to have a quick chat with you if you just want to stand here. And then I'd go 4 or 5 more people down the line. Someone else would say it. And when I turned around at the end of the day, there was probably 30 people there that all had these really traumatic stories. And so I went and saw a counsellor myself because I didn't quite know how to process what I'm this guy that kind of makes these feature films about traveling to different countries and buying a car and then driving around Cuba or New Zealand or Japan or somewhere and meeting people and learning about the culture. And now there's a lot of people who are looking up to me for advice. And so I didn't really know how to process and deal with that sense of people recognizing me in the street or coming to my house or asking me for help. And so I also found, similar to Amanada's story, that the counsellors weren't really that helpful for me in that way because it was kind of a unique thing for them. Obviously, it's a relational thing and you've got to find the right person. And so I went, maybe I just need to explore it myself. And so I saw a lot of young people who are creators on YouTube that were suicidal, that had suicided, that were depressed. And I went to New York and I spoke to the head of YouTube over there and I said, I think we've got a duty of care. The company has nothing to do with me. I think you have a duty of care, but we as a community to look after people. And I think there should be support, particularly for young people who are getting a lot of hate online or they've become famous really quickly. And they said it wasn't really set up for that. And I just went, you know what, I'm just going to go back to uni. I'll just do that myself. And so I spent 3 years and did my graduate diploma in counselling and psychotherapy. And what I can say, Amanada, is that if you're a counsellor in Australia and you've done your degree in the last few years, no counsellor is ever told to tell anyone they understand because our stories are too unique. And I would question any counsellor that says they understand you because I don't think they'll ever understand the depth of your story. So that's something that's been a really important thing for me, and I feel a responsibility because there's a lot of males watching my show, and particularly a lot of young males who I think are kind of this silent, unheard group. And so I'm trying to do what I can to try and reach those people that are not so desperate that they're in hospital, but everything's not going great either. They're just kind of in the middle, and that's where I'm trying to put a lot of my energy now.
Thanks, Blair. We're kind of watching the clock at the moment because we've got limited time. Seb, I'm going to throw the last question at you. It seems to me that the 100 Things concept has evolved from something that you kind of achieve more into something like paying goodwill forward. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't designed to do that, but over the 12 years it's been going, it started off as me marrying a stranger and jumping out of a plane with no clothes and all these ridiculous things. And but what it did do is kind of very organically create a community of people who also said, hey, well, if you can do your goals, why can't I? And I said, of course. So then it became a contingency and a group, a community of people striving for their own goals. And then people started asking me to help them achieve things. And the first guy I ever helped was a guy called Mark in Melbourne. He was a quadriplegic and he wanted to complete a half marathon. And number 26 on my list was to help someone. So I said yes, and I pushed him. And it was the greatest thing I've ever done. And I found that by the end of the race, I wasn't the only person pushing him. There was a whole group of strangers. And I thought, lots of people want to help. I wonder if everyone wants to help. We just lack the opportunity. And so that was kind of what I started to believe. So then a lot of other people started asking me for help, and I would essentially travel around the world helping whoever I could. And it was made into, oddly enough, a reality show here in the US somehow. I don't even know how, but it did. But the reality of that reality show, there was 26 episodes, one person per episode. But for every one person we said, sure, we'll help you, we had to say no to 100. And I thought, well, that's the reality. We're helping less people than we're turning away more people than we're actually helping. So then I just started sharing through my own social channels stories of people who needed help. And I would say, hey, this person over here needs this. Can anyone help them? And straight away they'd get helped. And it just escalated. So we've helped people move across the country. We've helped people who have been suicidal. I've been in a similar position to what Blair had just mentioned about seeking guidance on how to help people who come to me with serious mental anguish, etc. And more recently, there was a girl here in LA who needed a kidney. Otherwise, she's going to die. And we just got a donor, someone within the ecosystem of 100 things. So, yeah, I've just sort of, all I can say is that, again, reverting it back to pressing that button on the website and starting a list, I know firsthand that by doing that and thinking about yourself, you make yourself more available and more productive and helpful for other people down the track. So I think self-care is the first step to being, caring for others. And the significant difference that you can make through smiling or hugging somebody or offering to help, the smallest things make the biggest difference, as we all know here. And the people listening too, it's the truth. So, again, being conscious of time as we wrap up here, I could talk about helping for ages, and I'd love to, but I think the first point of helping is helping yourself. And how do you do that? I think you start a list. How do you do that? Give yourself permission.
That's a wonderful way to end today. One final thought. I thought, the thing that occurred to me when Mark's in his wheelchair said to you, "Push me," my first thought was, do you know what? That goes both ways, because you're pushing him, but he's pushing you as well to kind of do your best. I think that's a wonderful thought for all four of us, and Yvonne as well, about how we've dealt with, moving from one area to another, and how we can achieve our aspirations, and also in the same breath, try and help others achieve theirs. So thanks to Blair, Seb, and Aminata. It's been wonderful talking to you. And thank you so much to Yvonne Kelly for not just for today, but for this whole week of wonderful discussion. So thanks to all of you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, Anton. And I just want to throw one last question to each of you to answer. And my question to you is, who inspires you most? So Anton, maybe you start, and then we go Aminata, Blair, and Seb.
I'm going to be really boring and predictable here. When I was a young reporter in South Africa, 1994 was the big change in South Africa. The democracy came to South Africa. First time in my life. I never thought it would happen. I spent about 5 seconds shaking the hand of Nelson Mandela as he just sort of wafted through a room that I happened to be in. And, I remember it like it was yesterday, because, if ever there was somebody who encapsulated the spirit of South Africa, of Africa, of the world, then I think that was the person that inspired me the most.
Amazing. Thank you, Anton. And thank you for moderating such a beautiful conversation. Aminata, who inspires you most? I think I know what your answer is going to be.
Well, I will, apart from my dad, it's really Muhammad Ali. I just love, because in Africa, growing up in Sierra Leone, we knew Muhammad Ali as the boxer. We knew him as the boxer and Boomerang, like we love him. But when I came to Australia and I learned of his sacrifice and his integrity and his strength, and how a person of that time could give up everything for his truth. I don't want to get emotional. I know you were thinking my father. My father is the core of who I am. But Muhammad Ali, everything about what he stood for, and the fear, and I always live my life like that. Like I'm living really my last breath, and I'm ready when like what I'm passionate about, my foundation. I always say, I am so passionate about it that I'm willing to die for it. And Muhammad Ali, for me, stood in that center of a person that I truly just admired. And I know I will never meet him. He's passed, but I know I've met him in life before or afterwards. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Blair?
I had an opportunity about 5 years ago to meet a young man who was terminally ill, and through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, his wish was to spend a day with me and Marty, who I do the show with. And I went and I met with him, and I met with his mum and his dad, and I think of him often because he was a teenager and he knew that he was going to die, but he was so resilient and he was so proud and he was so full of life that it made me realize that if you can have the whole world against you, I mean, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. You can have the whole world against you and still you can get out of bed in the morning and you can look up and you have so much to give. And I contacted his parents yesterday. Since he's passed, we kind of speak to each other regularly. We've swapped numbers, and yesterday was the 5-year anniversary since I met him, and he really changed my life. And I think about him a lot. And I only got to spend a number of hours with him, and then a couple of years ago I went down to his funeral. But I think it goes to show that you don't have to have years and years and years of time with someone for them to impact you. It can be a really small moment. And for me, those few hours that I got to spend with him really helped me reevaluate what was important for me, and also just to keep going on when things are feeling tough.
Amazing. And Seb, we'll end with you.
Well, I think after today, probably Aminata, obviously. Before today, I mean, look, I was quite literally inspired by Chris, my buddy. That's what started everything. He was a catalyst for me. And, since then, I'm inspired by, I'm a humanist. I just love people, and I think everyone has something. And I'm inspired by everyone. The lady who I mentioned before in this workshop who realized she wanted to have boundaries in her life as her number one goal. I'm inspired by Mark asking me to help. As Anton mentioned, it wasn't just me helping him. It wasn't an act of charity. We both got to do something together. I'm inspired by anyone who's vulnerable enough to ask for help. I'm inspired by people who are brave enough to take a step in the right direction. I'm inspired by all of that, by community. I mean, truly, anytime I hear a story of someone just trying, it's inspiring. So it's not really any one person; it's everyone, including you guys. And again, thank you for having me and putting this on, Yvonne.
Oh, thank you. And I totally echo that, because you guys all inspire me, and the reason that you're here today. And my husband Alex, who's my business partner as well, and has helped me pull all of this together. I'm inspired by the team at Cisco, who have put it, I came to Tony with an idea. Tony's one of our Glow Up coaches who works at Cisco, and said, hey, I'd love to bring this together to, really give inspiration to people who are struggling at the moment, and, give them some practical advice. And Tony said, let's see what Cisco can do, and they've put together this team of volunteers to help. We've had so many people behind the scenes help out. Marlene Richardson from Gasbag PR, who put me totally out of my comfort zone and got me on Sky News, and we've been in the newspapers and doing so much promotion for such a good cause, to bring people and community together, and to really echo the sentiments that Aminata and Anton, you spoke about, in embracing new migrants and refugees and giving them all a chance and an opportunity in Australia. So that's been a real common theme. To all of our Glow Up coaches, we have a team of accredited Glow Up coaches that do amazing work, all of them do career coaching, but they also work with refugees and they volunteer their time to do that. So we've had teams of our coaches on every session answering questions for all of our viewers. So this has been such a big event. Alison Hallworth, who's been live tweeting every single session, she had one of the speakers this morning, she opened her home to let her come in and use her computer and set her up. And yeah, it's just been such a beautiful experience for me to take this one idea and see it come to fruition. And for all of our speakers who volunteered their time and shared so honestly and authentically their stories and their tips. And yeah, so thank you to everyone. I'm just going to pop a little QR code on the screen. We'd love to yeah, we'd love you to engage. We want to continue with doing some more podcasts and more events. We're not sure where this is going to take us, but if you want to reach out to me, or you want me to connect with any of the speakers, you want to find out more about what we're doing at Glow Up Careers as a social enterprise in the career coaching space, reach out. And absolutely to our absolutely amazing panel today, to Amanata, to Seb, to Blair, and to Anton. It's yeah, my dreams come true today. And Seb, I've ticked off I think I've ticked off many of my lists over the last week with all the things that have happened. So I think, you know, set your dream and absolutely chase it, and you can do it. And I think the stories today have been a testament to how that happens. So keep in touch and share your stories with us. Yeah, we'd love to hear how you get on following this. Thank you.